Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Soft Tree webinar on culverts. Today, we're going to focus on the demonstration of two different methods for the design of culverts. One method for minor culverts or cross drains and the other for major. I am your resident host, Erin, and with me is my colleague, Matt, our training manager and also resident webinar expert. And we're going to be spending an hour with you today tackling culverts. So let's talk about our official plan. To start, I'm going to do a little brief introduction discussing those two types of culverts in a bit more detail, and as well as some tools in the software that we have available for considering drainage area as well as maintaining natural flow paths. Then I'm going to pass it over to Matt. He's going to tackle two different culvert site geometry projects. The first is for minor culverts or cross drains, and the second is for major culverts. So they're done a little bit differently in the software, and we'll walk you through those. Next, we'll have our Q&A and just a bit of a housekeeping item. If you have a question during this webinar, feel free to enter it into that question section of your GoToWebinar panel at any time. We will be tackling them at the end, depending on how much time we have left. So type those as we go so you don't forget them. We'll discuss them at the end. For the YouTube watchers in the not so distant future, this is just a friendly reminder to check out the chapters listed in the video description below. They do allow you to jump to different steps in the video without having to say, listen to an introduction from Erin. Finally, a disclaimer for our presentation today. This is really, in terms of culverts, this is about the how to do it in the software, not so much the theory of what to do. And with that, there are a lot of resources available in your jurisdiction to help you with the what to do. I also wanted to highlight a resource that we at SoftTree brought out earlier this year, which was some awesome content created in collaboration with On-Site Engineering, in particular with Jeremy Araki from there, where we discussed drainage elements in road design and the role that they play in reducing the environmental impact of a road. So if you haven't seen it, it's up on our YouTube channel. You can find it under the Reducing the Environmental Impact of Roads playlist, and a lot of content in there on culverts. So again, today, not about culvert theory, but really about the workflows and the tools inside of RoadEng that you can use in your culvert projects. So let's just get into my minor introduction here, and then I'm going to pass it over to Matt for the fun stuff. So first off, minor culverts or cross drains, they have an important role in your road's drainage system. They allow water to be moved from one side of the road to the other. And the presence of excess water or moisture within that roadway, as you can see here in the two examples on the left, can be quite detrimental. Whereas in this image here on the right, we've got our road segment with several cross-drain structures, armoring of the cut slopes, culvert outlets, and this is going to help to avoid erosion and really to help move that water to the other side of the prism. So what does that look like inside of RoadEng? So you can see here that we've got minor culverts included in our plan, in our profile, as well as our cross-section views. And we could also create a data table that's got quantities and lengths and additional information for the culverts in our project. I should say, although this one in my screen capture isn't. Minor culverts can be accounted for in your road project and created quite quickly, actually, using the culvert editor panel. And this is what that looks like in the software. So using this panel, we can account for key variables such as location, length, diameter, the shape of the culvert, grade and skew, and more. So that's a brief introduction to minor culverts and how we bring those, or I should say cross drains, into RoadEng, into your project. The other type of culvert is a major culvert. And these have that same function that they're allowing water to be moved from one side of the road to the other, but given their larger scale, potentially their environmental sensitivity if they're a fish-bearing stream, it definitely warrants more detailed design and an even more greater importance placed on those positioning and sizing considerations. So a couple picture examples before we take a look at it in the software. First, we've got an undersized and actually impassable barrier on a fish-bearing stream for a culvert project. And then the second, we've got a culvert that it is positioned and sized for fish. So really, obviously important projects. And in the software, we spend quite a bit more time working with a major culvert project. Now, version 10, our latest Roadhenge version, does have some new functionality that makes this a fair bit easier. We've got some stuff for corridor surfaces that really streamlines, pun intended, the design process. So this is what it looks like in the software. We actually have a couple different alignments that are being modeled together. So we've got our roadway alignment being modeled, as well as our channel, as well as our culvert alignment. So in addition to those properties that we're going to look at for those minor culverts, we can also include some other ones, such as our modeling our excavation and our fill. If we need to realign the channel, we're able to do that. We're able to consider the long profile of the stream, the embedment depth, and then create construction documentation that's really tailored to that project. So before I pass it to Matt, 4 tools inside of Roadhenge that are also really worth noting when you're going and doing culvert projects. The first is the 3D window. I know there's some folks and users of ours that don't look at it too much. I encourage you for culverts, open it up, leverage it. 3D modeling in both the terrain and location module is really useful, as is the 3D visualization, especially that what you're getting from the corridor surfaces in those major culvert projects. The other tools that we have available, we've got some hydrology tools, and these can be really useful for delineating watersheds, calculating the drainage area to a point, as well as the generation of likely stream and pond locations. And I've got a couple of quick videos just because they take a minute or two when we're doing them live in a demo to calculate. So I'm going to save you the calculation time, save Matt some energy, and I'm going to cover these 2 quick videos just introducing those hydrology tools. So we're first going to look at the streams and ponds hydrology tool. And like all of the hydrology tools that I'm going to show you, they use a gridded approach to delineate and to determine their locations. This is a gridded raster model that's being created in the background. And here we can see our streams locations. And then with a point selected, we can actually go into another hydrology tool and calculate our drainage area to a point. So in this case, we can set that X and Y coordinate or have it selected in our model, use that gridded raster approach and calculate the area or create a feature representing the area that feeds it. With that feature, I should say, selected, we can go down into our feature status window area and see the area that it is feeding. So really useful for considering how you can maintain a natural flow path, for example, for a culvert by knowing those stream locations and then getting that drainage area as you think about sizing. Oops. Let's go past that. So this next video kind of carries off where we were in our last. But in this case, you can see that we've actually got that drainage area shaded. So from here, we can go, and if you're interested in it, it's not as relevant, I should say, as the other tools for culverts. But if you want to delineate all the watersheds for a given topo surface, we can do that. So the here hydrology tools, I should say the watershed function now, same approach. It's creating a gridded raster model. You will set the cell size depending on the cell size you use. It can, greatly impact the speed in which it's calculating. This little part of the video is sped up 5 times. Yeah, so we can get a really useful tool, get our watersheds for our topo, get those streams and ponds, as well as getting that catchment area to a point. So all tools available inside of Roadhenge. I should mention that streams, ponds, as well as the drainage to a point are in beta, meaning that we are refining them further and working on them. And that's enough for me. Matt, are you ready?
I
It's
am
coming
ready.
your way.
All right, excellent.
Okay.
Thank you for the great introduction and yeah, covering all that ground. I'm just going to share my screen. So I'm going to pick up where Aaron left off and focus on culvert functionality in the software. So to start, I'm going to just kind of start from a road design that's largely been designed, but the culverts haven't been added, and we'll look at that for kind of those minor culverts where we're just going to drop them in and make sure they're aligned in the right direction and the right diameter and the right structure type. And we can do that very, very quickly. And then we're going to switch over to our major pipes. So our major pipes will be kind of those projects that we want to take a closer look at rather than just dropping in a culvert on our center line. We're going to look at the actual geometry of the streams that we want to place them on and model the excavation that we need in order to get that culvert down to its desired elevation, position it, and maybe do a little channel realignment as we do that. And then using corridor surfaces, we're going to then put our road back on top of that channel that we've designed. So, as promised, we'll start in the minor category, and I've got this design open here. So here we can see I've ran the streams functionality that Aaron showed in the video. I've got a road modeled in here, and of course we're looking at it in the 3D view. So right away, that 3D modeling is pretty useful just to see what's going on. Even if we didn't have the streams or flow paths delineated, we can still see that there's a natural flow path there, and yeah, we can see that our road's in a low point at that location. So I'm going to just make that a little smaller, and let's jump there. So here we can see in our 3D view, we're in a low point. Of course, we're in near crest of our alignment, but we still need a culvert just to maintain that natural flow path. So I'm going to go to my culvert editor button here. So I've got my culvert panel open. I'm going to click add. So it lets me choose which station that I'm going to place that pipe. And in this case, it's my current station, and I'll hit OK. So there we are. I've added a 600 mil culvert. I can see where that's positioned in my 3D view. And in this case, maybe I want to adjust it back. So I'm just going to double click that. I'm going to scooch it back a few meters. So there we are. And I can see that in my 3D view. Now, if you're not seeing that in your 3D view, you can come in here and go corridor design features plus, and we'll make sure that those culverts are being modeled as we add them. Now with this, if I want to make adjustments, so right now I have it set to be perpendicular to my road, so 90 degrees skew. I've got my gradient set to auto, so this is matching the crossfall of my roadway. Maybe I want to hang my outlet for whatever reason, and I could say, well, let's go with a 5% culvert grade. I'm going to turn that back on. Now we can adjust the skew as well. So if I want to go rotate that 10 degrees, I'll change it in either direction. And we can change that back. Now for our upper ditch catch point, if for some reason we wanted to perch that inlet or make some other adjustment, we can. So I can come in here and I can say minimum depth at center line. And let's set that at 0.3. So here we can see that's not doing us much good. We're poking through. So I'm going to move that back. And most of the time, I'm a fan of just using that attach upper ditch to catch point. You'll notice as I do this, whenever I make a change, if I want it to take effect, I'm hitting apply. So the idea here is we could change a bunch of these and just hit apply once. All the changes would take place for us. Length is set to auto, so it's going from the inside to the outside. Now if I wanted to, say, have that at 9.5 and that at 5.5, nice easy numbers for our bill of material, we can change that. And then if I want to have something like maybe a sump here, I'm going to just hover and get my offset. So if I want my ditch depth to be on the high side of 2.5 meters deep, so I can see that vertical offset there, I'm going to come in here, overrides, I'm going to set my ditch depth to be 2.4, make it a little wider at the bottom here as well. So overriding my ditch, I'll hit OK, and there we are. And we can see this is modeling for us as we do it. So I'm happy with that one. Now, it can be really quick. We'll just look for, we should probably put a pipe here. Click add. I'm happy with that. And maybe I'd armor that, but we'll circle back to that. And then as we get going down here, well, I know my low point is somewhere in here. And if my ditch is following that, well, road alignment, we probably want a culvert here as well. Now I'm going to remove that just for the sake of showing a little feature that I'm a fan of. If we want to identify the exact low point of that seg, we can come in here, profile options, and we are going to add in the low station. So this has a low station of 386.9. We'll click add. And now we know we're right where we want to be. So if we're happy with that, and say we went through this entire design, we could produce a bill of materials with our culvert quantities. So here I've got a data table showing my cuts and fills. I'm going to come over here, click new data table. I'm going to configure something entirely new. So the points that I'm interested in this case are anywhere that I've added a pipe. The columns I'm interested in are, well, I still want to know my stationing. Let's go to the culverts folder. Now we could add a bunch of information. Some of it could be pertinent for construction layout, like inlet, outlet, XYZ. In this case, let's just go with culvert diameter, culvert length, and kind of focus on the bill of materials side of things. So we've got that. And then I should mention this earlier as well. We can go in here, we can click add. Notice these were defaulting to 600 mils. Well, that's because when I've added them, previously I've set this to be my kind of standard minimum culvert diameter. So if I make that 500, we can have that, and then we could hit save. Save to disk for future use. Well, usually I'd hit OK, but I like 600, so I'm going to leave that. But now when I add this in, oh, because I didn't hit save, of course. Now when we add that in, it takes the 500, or however we've had that configured. Now another thing here is, I'm going to remove this one. If when we click add, we turn on natural channel, that allows us to have a different set of standards for those. So we can put that in there, and again, previously when I set this up, I've set this to be a natural channel. I set my typical diameter for that. I hit save, and so that's a different default being applied depending on what category of structure it is. And then I think the last thing that I'll cover in this minor culvert category is we can change the structure type. So if we've got I do a box culvert, We'll set our height to be 1.5 and our width to be 2.5. We're not putting that on. Oh. We can see what we're dealing with. Now in this case, of course, that doesn't fit. We'd either need to override this, or maybe we use a smaller pipe or realign our road or what have you. So that's a quick overview of kind of the culvert panel, how to make sure you can see those culverts in the 3D view, the different parameters we have to adjust things, and then how to create a bill of materials with your culvert specs. Yeah, so with that, let's jump out of here and jump into something a little more involved. So this next example that I have is a culvert replacement project. So we've got some old dilapidated metal pipes, a little undersized, and we want to replace them. So we've got our existing road. We want to model removing that existing road. Most of our topo data in this one was LiDAR. Now we do have some conventional survey data that we've merged in with our profile and break lines at the toe of the bank. So I'm going to use this, but I'm going to, rather than draw my channel alignment in by hand, I'm going to use an existing feature for that when it gets into choosing that channel alignment. And since this is going through a road, I'm going to just copy these. I'm going to paste those two features, hit join, and I call it long profile, and I don't want it to be modeled. And I'll hit save, and now I'm going to jump over and I'm going to do my major culvert design in location. So I'm opening up location. I'll click new file. I'm going to select my topo, just as you would if you were doing road design. Let's go with this one, so that's where it's saved. And just so I don't make it too seamless and kind of hide what's going on here, I'm not going to use this initial alignment to start. I'm going to just use a single point. And I'm going to do my road first. All right, so we've got that. Now I'm going to just, for added context, I'm going to add a background in here with my ortho imagery. And I want to see this topo surface as a surface. So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to add my road in. Actually, let's make it green. I'm just going to use my final merge surface here, and we'll talk more about that as we get going. And I want to see the topo surface as a surface. I'm going to make it transparent. So I adjust the alpha channel to do that. Now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to start off by kind of oversimplifying it. But I'm going to drop that in position, add my vertical alignment, and the way we were tackling this with a simple minor culvert would have been to come over here and click add and drop that pipe into position. Now we're not going to do that. So I'm going to delete that and let's use this line work that we have, and we're going to look at our stream. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create another alignment for my stream. I'm going to use that surveyed Thalweg as my initial alignment. And with this, of course, it's not going to be a road. So just to start, I'm going to add an empty template so we can see that going through there. And I'm going to zoom to my profile, and that's our long profile. Now in this case, I don't want to worry about the individual little bumps in that profile, so I'm going to just remove some points along my profile. I could do that by hand, or I can come over here and do it by a function. So delete range, I just want to delete profile points. Now we've got our straight shot going through there. So we've got about a 1% grade. Now for this, I'm going to turn off my green road. We're going to want to dig this up. So we're going to apply a appropriate cross-section geometry. And in this case, we want to do box culverts. And let's assume that we want to place the start of our box culvert at station 130. And we want that to run through, say, station 150. And if we don't get it right, that's okay. We can make adjustments after the fact. So we'll come in here. We can apply whatever templates we have. Now I happen to have one here. So I'll go station 130 to 150. And just to see what's going on here, I'm going to add in that corridor surface for that. So there we are. We can see we've got something going on there, and if we click in our alignment, we can see what we're actually rendering. Now, of course, if you've opened up the software before, you'll notice that, well, you won't have that by default. So let's look at how we put together that template to give us that cross-section geometry we'd like. So this is the template that we're using. Now, when you install the software, you have these three templates to pull from, so cross-section geometries to pull from. So if I wanted to build that out, I'll click that, I'll click paste as new. Now I just want the slopes from this. I'll change the name, call it single, actually, triple box culvert. I don't want to worry about crowns and stuff like that. It's not a road. I'm going to remove these components, and then I'm going to go on to the eLibrary to pull in what I'd like. So I'll use this component in this case. So I'll hit copy. I'll hit paste as new. So I've got that set there. Now, if I want to make this a triple, I'll go in and grab my box culvert 2, paste as new left, and I'd make sure that I've sized this appropriately. So I've got my rise, my span, thicknesses, I've got an offset in here for running my compactor. And then I would take that, once it's all sized appropriate, paste as right, copy, paste as right. So pretty easy to put that together. And then we could pull that in as the template that we've called TVC and apply that, where in this case we've applied this DVC. So easy to put the templates together in order to do this. Now the other thing that we have is we want to make this look a little nicer. This template isn't just a down, across, up, and over. There's some different materials here. So if we want to render that in the 3D view or see it in other views when we jump back into our road design, we can. So I'll hit OK. So I am going to make this look a little prettier. So I'm going to add in another corridor surface. So there's different layers in those templates. So I want to see my subgrade. So I've got my stream alignment. I'm going to select my subgrade. I'm going to make that, let's make it brown so it looks like dirt. Let's go with our surfacing volume 6. So this is my leveling course. And let's make that this color here. And we'll go with, again, so we're going to add in a layer for each one of these materials that we want to see differently. We'll go with that. And let's make that teal. We'll go with surface layer 9. We'll make that silver. And last but not least, we'll go with layer 16 and we'll make that one mustard as well. So we've got that. Now I'm going to just turn off this merged layer. And now we can see exactly what we have going on there for our different layers. Now I'm going to just make a couple tweaks to my alignment. Of course, this isn't set in stone. I've just got the surveyed alignment here. Maybe we want to try and make it a little closer to perpendicular. I've got that. And if we look at our profile here, so I'm more or less just doing this for the sake of adding on a little bit of channel grading, we can see that we aren't up out of anything here. So we can add on another template. So I'll go in here. I've got a template that I've called channel, but all it is a road template with an armored ditch acting as a buttress. So I'm going to apply that to about there. So sign by range 167. There we are. We've got that armoring. If I want to see that in here, once again, if it's a unique layer and I don't want to just show the final merge surface, I'm going to have to show it here. So that's in there as layer 4, and we will make that 40% gray. So we've even armored our outlet as we round the bend there. So that is how I'd figure out the my culvert alignment, and I've modeled it. I'm happy with the length, at least at a glance. Now let's go back into our roadway. I'm going to shift this down. And of course, we could show our different pavement structures here. I'm going to cheat though, rather than clicking that in. We'll just show the final merge surface. And we can see where we're popping out. Maybe I could use a little extra length on that downstream end. So let's go back in here and do that. So we'll go and there we are. So now I'm happy with my pipe. I've got my road where I'd like. Now the one thing that I haven't done yet, like on the last item, is this is showing me with my big excavation for my pipe and all that, it's just showing me relative to the original ground. So this is that new version 10 functionality that Aaron introduced. And we can take that stream alignment and we can merge that into our topo surface so these can dynamically talk back and forth and know where they're at. So with this, I'm going to come in here. I've got my stream final merge surface. I'm not going to display it, but I'm going to make this merged into my topo surface. So there we are. And now I'm just going to scoop back here. So we can see that now I've got subgrade going down and I can't really see what it is. So I'm going to just, again, show a little bit extra. I'm going to turn on reference surfaces. And I want to make sure I can see all these different surfaces that we've created in the 3D view. So we can actually see what we're dealing with in this. So I'll come back here so we can see this is perpendicular to our roadway. My culvert's on a little bit of a skew, so we can see actually what that looks like cut perpendicular to our roadway. And then if we want to look at the section relative to the stream, we can look at the section relative to the stream. So I'm happy with that. Now, of course, we could add in labeling. So we've got options to customize labels. We can annotate with floating labels. Of course, not going to worry too much about that. But the next thing would be, well, how do I get this into a document? So I'd come over to my multi-plot editor and we could add in individual subviews and build this document out from scratch, or of course I'm going to favor the easy button here. I could bring in a pre-formatted chapter from our multi-plotty library, or if I've already done it, I could open an entire workbook and have my document already largely set up. So I could go in here and I want my culvert book for my stream portion. So there, I got that, my overview, got that, and then I've got my cross sections. And of course here I don't really care about cross sections for all that stuff before I've inserted my culvert. So we can change our pagination for, let's go from station 130 to, and I should have looked at what I had applied. Rather than bring it up, I'll just estimate it 130 to 160. So there's our cross sections. Now for our roadway, if we want our road sections, we'd have to make that our active alignment, and I'd have another workbook for the road. And in this case, I'd just tag it on to the end of the one with my culvert information, and I could set that start page to be page 5 or whatever the one plus the end of my document for the stream alignment. Now, with all of this, there's a good chance for these major structures we're going to want actual staking notes and coordinates and whatnot. So we could come over here and hit File, Save As. We could save that as a LandXML file, in which case we could pull out all those different surfaces that we've defined. I guess used to culverts being pipes. So I'll call that, and then I could come in here and say, well, I want to include all these surfaces, current alignment only, or do I want to have it for my roadway as well, all in the same file? And then we could have those surfaces defined as surfaces, our alignments defined as alignments, and we could use that in other software, or we could use it for construction staking as well. Now we could also go in here and we could save it out as a TXT file if we just wanted to stake with layout points rather than surface information, or we could save it to another format as well for either sharing with the GIS department, sharing with folks using other softwares, etc. So with that, that is what I hoped to show, and yeah, made better time than I expected.
I am impressed too. I thought you were going to be overtime for sure. So anyways, thank you, Matt. We went through minor culverts, how to add them with the culvert editor panel, and then a major culvert project through to construction documentation. So yeah, you covered a lot of ground. So now we have an amazing 15 minutes at least to tackle questions. So if you are new to our webinars, just a reminder, or I should say a notice, everyone who asks a question does remain anonymous. You can access the Q&A section of your GoToWebinar panel just by expanding it, and there's a little spot you can type in any questions you want. Oh goodness, they're coming in. Okay, Matt, are you ready?
Oh, I'll try my best, yep.
Okay, the first question, can you add culverts at set intervals?
Yeah, where do I want to do that? I'll do that in this one. Bear with me, I'm not going to do a good job of this, but as in I'm not going to put too much care in figuring out where these should actually go. But we can click culverts add. We can say, well, I want to add these every 10 meters, and I want to do 5 of them. And there we are.
Awesome.
Now, yeah. Yeah, with that, it's kind of one of those things you don't expect it to land in the perfect spot every time. It's better for if you had your road going across maybe a swamp or something like that, and you want to vent, then vent your prism rather than making sure you're landing in the low spot every time. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going. This one I think is for minor culverts as well, so keep this project open. Is it possible to add Armour to these cross drains?
Yep. For that you won't do it right here. I should have. So let's just perch this pipe. So if we wanted to armor that outlet, we're not going to do it in the culvert panel. We're going to say, well, I want to armor it from, I'm going to cheat just so I don't have to do, we'll make it 500. So if I wanted to have that armor apron, say, 3 meters either side of it, well, we could say, first, we need to have a template set up with rock. So we've got our stacked rock fill template. So this one's called SRF. Yeah, and just if you're curious where that came from, it comes from the slopes component. So we can expand that, and then it's this component down here. And that one is there. So I've got my template already built. So I want to go from, say, 497 to 503. 497 to 503. And it's going through and recalculating my road. There we are. And if we want to see it here, just for the sake of it, that major culvert design that I did, I had materials layers being shaded. So here my surfacing layer 4 is what I want to show. So there we can see that armoring being applied. And we can right click in our cross sections to see what different layers are being tracked as. So I've done that previously. I knew this is being tracked as surface volume 4, so that's why I shaded surface 4.
I feel like you knew the next question, and maybe you took a peek at the question panel, which was the next one, which is how do you know which layers are in your template? You added a lot of layers in your reference corridor services.
I actually
Can
didn't
you
read
tell
that.
us more?
No, I just realized as I kind of rounded the bend at the end of the last one that I didn't really explain where those came from. So just since I did that more in the major culvert than this one, we can right click in here and we can say, well, let's hatch area for subgrade. So I can see that that kind of red line is defining where my subgrade is being tracked. I'm going to move over to the template editor just because in this I can pull it around and I can see what's going on. So here, hatch fill area, we can toggle that on and off. And with this, I've got my reference surface being shown there. So that's what's showing up. But I can go through and I can click anywhere in here and see what I'm dealing with. So that concrete portion of the top of my culverts is being tracked as surface volume 8. So I knew what they were because I've done this before, but if you're working with templates that you haven't used, or maybe you haven't used them for a while, or maybe you've just kind of slipped your mind, you can click on what you're dealing with and say, oh, that's surface volume 8. If I want to show that separate, well, we'll make sure we're showing surface volume 8.
Okay. Next question on our list, and just a reminder, feel free to type them in. We should have time for at least 3 or so more questions in the webinar. The next question, is there a way to add culverts by invert coordinates?
All right, so that's kind of depends on how you look at it. For your major pipes, we could define our alignment based off of a coordinate. So, and it's going to be different for whether you're in your X or Y. So horizontal IP, we'd define that, and then we could come into our vertical. Now I don't have a vertical here, but I could add one in. So I could jot down the station that that previous IP was, and I could set my elevation to be whatever I'd like. Or we could define it in here tabularly. So that's how we would define our alignment tabularly, and if we were doing a major culvert, we could use that for it. Now for the minor culverts, so we've got this, we can see here, there's actually no location to define that insert based off of a coordinate. Now, that being said, you can get pretty close pretty quickly by using a data table. Now it'll be iterative. You'll have to move things around a little bit, but you can come in here and you can culverts, inlet X, Y, and Z. So we could go through and we could play with our either station, skew. If we want to match it up with the elevation, we could use that here to narrow in on getting the desired inlet coordinates. So not directly, but pretty easily with a little bit of a workaround.
Okay, let's go to the next one. How does this culvert design tool interface with Civil 3D?
All right, so that one would be, yeah, we kind of alluded to it here. If we wanted to share this, I'll go back to this one here. If we wanted to share this with, say, someone working in Civil 3D, we'd go in here, hit Save As, and we'd choose a format that is compatible between the two of us. So I'm a big fan of LandXML just because that's going to preserve all your surface information. So I would lean towards saving it out as a LandXML and going back and forth with that. But you could also save it out as a DWG or DXF, or yeah, I'm sure there's some other formats that are compatible across the board. So that's, yeah, I would favor LandXML.
Awesome. Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button there to introduce our next question, which is, can you show us how to get earthwork quantities for the major culvert project?
All right. So I guess with this, we're going to keep in mind that we've got two different alignments, so they're going to be tracked for two different alignments. So my stream portion here, if I want to see how much subgrade I'm cutting, and I'm not really interested in my concrete quantities, that's going to be paying for the unit. So let's go with surface volume 6 for my leveling course and subgrade. And we've got a little bit of backfill in there to do a simulated stream bed. So if I want to populate my quantities for that, I can pop open my data table. And let's pretend that's not already showing that stuff. So I would say, well, I probably want to see my design totals. And I probably want to see a breakdown every so often. So in this case, I don't want to see it every 100 meters. I'm going to change that to be every, let's do every 10 meters, just where it's a small site. And we'll look at our columns. Now in this case, I happen to have this already showing my subgrade cut and fill, but for those other materials, we'll come down here. So I've got surface column 6, 9, and my rock armor out here is being tracked as 4. So there we are. And now in this case, I've got a lot of alignment. Before and after my actual project, just where I wanted to see that long profile. But there we can get the breakdown. So pretty painless. And as expected, we're not really filling anything here other than the actual rock material and leveling course and whatnot, but not subgrade.
Awesome. Okay. Good work, webinar audience. You guys are sure making Matt jump around a lot. This is fun to watch. Our next question, can you calculate culvert lengths to extend variable lengths past the fill or cut slope? For example, 1 or 1.5 meters extended past.
So not as a function, but it is just as simple as coming in here, turning auto off, and we can say, well, actually, again, I don't want to just drive that into the ground since I'm going to go past. So on the left-hand side, if I have auto set, so we're at 4.85, and we could extend that out to whatever we like. And of course, Watch me struggle with my simple mental math. So 6.35. So we've got that. It's going out to 6.35.
Awesome. Hopefully that answered the question asker's question there. Let's do a couple more.
Okay.
So this one, oh, I love the preamble in this question. I understand that this webinar is for adding culverts to the corridor. Is there any library for adding different types of bridges as well?
No. Short answer, no. Now in the minor editor, we could see we could change our structure type. I kind of half expected that there would be a bridge question, just being that it is similar or kind of related. Crossing's a crossing anyway. You can design your bridge sites in RoadEng. With that, there's a couple things to consider. One is you're probably going to want to model the abutments as something other than an alignment. So with our roads and culverts, it makes sense. We've got a center line and we can attach a cross-section geometry to them and model things quite well. But for our bridge abutments and figuring out how far out that armor is going to go, we do that modeling in terrain. So we figure out, well, we define our superstructure, figure out where our sill is or wherever our armor is going to start, and then we'll grade down to either an elevation or a target surface to model that, model our armoring and the abutment excavation. So just as a tangent, you'll do a fair bit of your design work in terrain for that if you're modeling that in RoadEng. For kind of pre-formatted setups, short answer is we don't have a library of them. We can model, and I'll have to jump into, I think this is it. We can model actual solids as 3D facets. So you can do that in terrain. You can use them over and over again on different projects and move them into place. Or we can also insert an OBJ file. So get the 3D solids from that format and then just move them into place in terrain and do your grading from those. So hopefully that answers that question. And just in this case here, this so this feature is being modeled as a 3D facet, so that's what defines that face. That's what's being defined on that face as well, so it's true 3D modeling in order to get something that looks like that.
Okay, I'm going to give you the last question. I'm picking the easiest one I can find here to end it off. So that is, can the material or data table be exported to an Excel file?
Oh, nice. Perfect one that I should have covered in the actual presentation to wrap things up. And actually, just since it's on Culverts, let's go back to this one. All right, so if I want to take this and jump over to Excel, I can do it two ways. I could either export it as a, oops, wrong button. Export it to an ASCII format, or I could just hit copy, data to clipboard, and I can take it over and paste it into Excel. So paste, and there we are. And that works for your mass hall diagram. So we can come over here, copy clipboard, OptiHall information, other data tables, etc. So it's pretty easy to go back and forth with Excel.
Awesome. And Matt, just to end it off, I am going to steal the screen just for a little public service announcement for webinars. So we have just published our full, I'm going to say fall and winter webinar calendar. Obviously, Culverts 101, that's what we're in right now. But we do have webinars coming up all the way through into, I believe, January or February planned. Next one that's probably of note to this English-speaking audience is on November the 3rd. That's tips and techniques for working with large and high resolution data sets. So we're going to talk about how you can, leverage your LiDAR for road design, strategic thinning, and a whole bunch of tips and techniques recommended for working with those large LiDAR data sets and keeping your model happy. And then after that is working with walls and retaining structures. And I feel like that's quite relevant to this audience as well. So that's November the 17th. Free registration up at softry.com/free-webinars. And that's it for today's webinar. Thanks everyone for spending an hour with us. We're 1 minute over, so I'm impressed. Thanks, Matt. Great coverage and a ton of questions. So if you have extra questions, feel free to email us, support team at softry.com. Otherwise, have an amazing rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.